Hello and welcome. This is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and in today's training we're going to show you how to send any information to Google Sheets without using Zapier. And we're going to wrap it all up into this amazing help desk manager that you can use in any application, so that when your customers or your clients need any help, all they need to do is submit this form and it's going to come automatically back into your application. I can't wait. We've got a lot to cover today in this very unique training, so let's get started. All right, thanks so much. In this application, we're going to go through a ton of features, but we're going to focus primarily on the ability to take Excel information from a form such as this from any application, send it to Google Sheets without using Zapier, just code alone. And Zapier is a great tool, but there's a limit of 100 zaps per month, and otherwise they charge you. And in an application like this, you may get thousands or something. So I wanted to provide you some training that you can send information automatically to Google Sheets, and of course get that information right back into Excel without any third-party applications, with just simply VBA coding. So I'm going to show you how we do that now, and I'm going to wrap all of that in this training where we can show you how you can disperse your applications, deploy your applications around the world, easily give them the ability to submit their own tickets. So all they have to do is enter their name here and their email address here and select a type. You can use any form of this, of course, and then you can do it, and then we'll submit the ticket. And once the ticket is submitted on their application, wherever they are in the world, in your application, all you need to do is then just check for new tickets. That information is going to come all the way back to you, and it's going to display it right here as an open ticket. And so now you see we have new tickets open, and now we have brand new, this information just came in, so we can now work with these tickets. We can mark it as closed, and we're also going to be able to email the customer that information, showing them that if it was fixed, we can say we can close it, and then we can close the issue, and then we can email them different templates. So we've got a lot to cover on this. Send that. It's going to create an email automatically with all the details. So it's a lot of training, and it's a great little application that I wanted to show you. So let's get started with that. All right, so when we break this application down, it's just a few different components. We have our UI here. Basically, this brings everything together and lets a manager control which tickets are open, which are closed, and allows them to close. And we can also show open and closed tickets. So for example, if we close this ticket and we put a closed on date here, and then we update the ticket, it's going to show closed. We may not want to show, so if we want to show only open tickets, we just click here, it's going to show closed, or click it again, it's going to only show those. So everything comes into here. Whatever you select is going to display up here, and you can click the update tickets. And the idea is we have several email templates where you can choose between email templates to send out email templates to the people who have submitted their tickets easily using some templates, and it contain all data based on the specific ticket, which is kind of handy. We have a tickets table. This is where our tickets are stored, mainly stored. Remember, our tickets here may only show open, not closed, but we really need a place to store them all. So this is a great place to do that. We've done this. Our help desk ticket database will do just that. It's going to store all of our tickets. And then we have our tickets import. This is just an import where it takes from Google Sheets and brings it in here. So it's always going to be updated and replaced. Other than that, so we're going to take any updated data, bring it into our tickets table. So if we have brand new tickets, we're going to bring them here. And then we have our email templates, and then we have our tickets. Now the idea is this. So you take your application, you have this help desk manager application, and let's say we want to create a brand new, let's say you have an application. Let's say, remember our send, and this is one of the applications that I created. We have a quiz data, this application I created. Now I want to create a help ticket for this application. It's so simple. You have your original, we're going to go over this VBA in detail, of course, but let me just show you what we. So we have our form, our help ticket form. This is just our form here, so we see it's a form. So what I want to do is I want to take this form and I want to drag it into the application. I want to take this form and drag it into our send and receive quiz data here. So now it's in our quiz data, and I also want to take one macro, just one macro, and it's going to call submit ticket macro. I'm going to drag this in here too. Now let's open up our application that we want, and we just insert a shape, any kind of a shape that you want to assign a macro. And let's just call it need help. And we'll give it a different type of color just so user can differentiate from it. So we'll give it a color here. So now we have a need help. And all we need to do is assign a macro to this. So we're going to assign the macro, and I want to display the macro. We just imported this macro, display submit ticket form. Now, when we click it, it's going to display the form because we imported the form into this. Now all they have to do is put in their name, wherever they are in the world, enter their email, enter the issue, enter some description, and then just click submit ticket. And it's done. It's automatically submitted, and that's all you have to do to incorporate this in your own applications. All right, I'm glad I got to show that to you. Let's take a look at the form itself. We'll start out with that. So into the developers, Visual Basic, and we'll take a look at the submit ticket form. This is a form that I created, and you can create your own form, of course. All right, let's take a look at this form here. And basically all I've done is just a very basic form, but I've put a picture in the back of it. So when we take a look at the properties here, we look at the form itself titled Submit Ticket Form here, and it's got a caption of Submit a Ticket Form. We see that there's a picture. So when we look at the picture and click on here, see that this is a picture that I created. All it is a picture, and I use pretty much the same color background as my application so that it ties in. And also, if you notice the buttons down below, those are also pictures as well. So I use those as pictures. So instead of using a button now, you can use a traditional button. For example, if you want to use a traditional button here, if we click on the form, you can do that. I just didn't like the way that it looks so much. So for example, if you put in a command button here, and you can assign a picture to that as well. So if we look in the properties under this, we see that we also have the ability to add a picture. So if we do that, I could add that, but I don't like, we can also make it a transparent style here, which we can. Let's drag it down here so we can just see what it would look like. But I didn't like it so much as far as the borders, and I didn't like the way that it handled so much. And it was just kind of ugly. And even though I can make it, it wasn't nearly as nice as a button that's based on a picture. Now keep in mind that this type of button will have a tab stop, but these pictures don't have tab stops. So it's kind of a drawback, but for me it's worth it. So because I like this idea of having it. All right, so let's take a look. These are just standard text box fields, and I've assigned specific names. So you'll see this one has sender name assigned to it, and this one is sender email. This one is the type, issue type. And if we take a look at the issue type, those are based on specific sources. So we double click this. Every time we initialize this form, user form initialize, that's the only code, I want to set a specific list to this type. Now this is hard coded in. So these are the items that I've assigned: VBA bug, visual defect, missing feature, or other. Those are the 4 list types, and you can add your own. I wanted this, I didn't want it based on any specific cell items or any specific workbook, because I want to be able to drag and drop this workbook in any workbook. So these are dynamically placed here. So these are placed based on just the settings right in VBA. You can change your own, of course, as you like it, but keep that in mind. If you're going to use a list form type, you might want to add it, especially if you're going to be dragging and dropping into several workbooks. So keep that in mind. And of course, the name on this is called description form. So that's pretty much everything that makes up this. If we double click this, we see there that this is the submit button. We don't need this. We have the cancel button, and we have the submit button. On the submit button, click. That's called submit ticket form, and then all we're doing is hiding, and then we're going to run a macro called send ticket. I'm going to go over that macro with you very shortly. Of course, the cancel, all we're going to do is use unload me, which is going to clear the form and hide the form. So those are the only 3 small little macros in code that are actually assigned to the code, and you can reach this code when we click right click, view the code. You can't see that's a little bit off the screen here. Let's bring that up. If you right click view the code, you can view the code, or you can right click view the object. Either way, you can get to it. That is all there is. And of course, the tab stops has been assigned tab stop 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's it for this form. And if we run it, we can see how we can now tab over through the form very, very simply. Okay, so how do we actually get the information to Google Sheets and then back to us? Well, let's go over step one first, to Google Sheets. Now, you know that the form got submitted, but where did it get submitted? Well, actually, what we did is we created a form from Google Drive. If you look at this in my Google Drive, all you need to do to create a brand new form is just click on New, More, and then Google Forms. Now, I've already created a Google form and it looks something like this. It's a very basic form called ticket form. I've given it a name, given it a description here, and I've given it basically 4 fields. Now, those 4 fields mimic the same exact fields that we have on our form here. So I've given the same forms. I've moved this test form over here, this name, email, type, and submit ticket. So I've given it all those same fields in the form as well. So we have that. So name is just a short answer. Email address, a short answer, but I've given it, make sure that it's a correct email. I made sure that it's an email address type. And of course, also, these are the same 4 options on a list, the same 4 options that I have also assigned my drop-down list. Lastly, the issue description. So the 4 fields, I've created a Google form exactly like that. Once you create your form with all of your forms, then what do you want to do? Then you want to click this button. What do we want to do is we want to get pre-filled links. So once you create your form, click on it and called Get Pre-Filled Link. Now, once you here, what you want to do is you want to then enter information for each one. Enter information that you can have, like test name and then perhaps test@email.com. Make sure you enter something. Then choose an option, anyone is fine, and then enter a description like test description, something small but you can remember that differentiates. Once you have entered some sample names for all of your fields, then click Get Link. Now we have copied that link, and now what you want to do is copy that link. Click copy the link. Now it's been copied. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it inside my code. We're going to go over this macro in just a minute, but I'm going to paste it right in here. All right, now that it's been pasted in here, we have it ready for us. So I'm going to show you exactly how we go through that link and how we use it to get all of our data. In this application, you wouldn't want to necessarily put this. This is just for testing purposes. This button would go in whatever application you send out to your customers. So here we have this just for testing purposes. But basically, so we have that, and that's been assigned to this macro here, display form. That's all that does is show the form. Next, what I want to do is I want to get into this send ticket. This is really important. This is what's going to send our data to the Google form and to the sheet. So if we look in that sheet here, you'll see that it's been automatically updated right here. In this sheet, the last one we created is right here. This is it right here. So it goes automatically to the sheet from this form to the sheet. So how do we do that? What macro do we use to get it there? I'm going to go over that with you right now. So here's the link that we copied over. So first thing we wanted to mention a few strings. So send link as a string, start link as a string, and end link as a string. We're going to be taking apart this link because we have to put it in 2 different parts, and then we're going to take variables and put it in. I also want the header name and the send ID as string. Those are going to help us create it. Also, we want to know the reported by, the email address, the issue type, and the issue description as strings. Those are all part of this information here, so I need to know those. That's very important because when we send the form out, I need to pull the values from here, from here, from here, and from here. I need to pull those 4 values, so we want to put them into variables. So we can do that when we define them as strings. So after we've done that, we can set the reported by, also the email address, the issue type, and the issue. Next up, the ticket info as MS.XML, the server. That's going to send the information to the server. And also we need the header type. What is the header type? Google recognizes the content type, so Google has to know that. And we want to give it make sure we give it a send ID. That would be the application x-ww form URL encoded and the character set. That's just words that Google will understand, so that when you send Google Forms that particular information, it's going to understand it all. So what we want to do is we want to get the 4 details from our form. That's very important. So we want the reported by, and they're all based on the specific fields that I just said. So here's the form name right here, submit ticket form. We have just one form right here, submit ticket form. Then we have the field name. Remember, field name, sender name, and then the value of that. Of course, for each one, the sender email and the value, the issue type, and the description. So we're going to pull all the values directly from the form and put it into these strings right here. Now we're ready to build that link. Now remember that link that we copied over here? Just to refresh your memory, where did we get that link from? We got it right from here. All we did was enter the information here, and then we click get link, and then we copy the link. That's where we got that link. You'll need to get that link when you want to do that. So make sure you do that on your own form. So the first thing we want to do is take that link all the way up to the backslash and copy that all the way, the entire link up to the backslash. Right before where it says view form in that backslash, copy that. Take it and paste it in, again, right up until the backslash right here, and paste that in. You want to make sure to keep the backslash form response to question mark IFQ. So keep that. So that's the first part of the link. The next part of our link, I really want to work on putting inside all of those variables, putting in the reported, putting in email, putting in. So how do we do that? Well, that's the second part of the link. Now that we have this, let's get rid of this on our comment, because we already fixed it. We don't need USP PP URL. We don't need that, so you can get rid of that. The first thing we want is starting at and entry. So I'm just gonna clear that out so we can look, so we can see the rest of our link. What is the rest of our link? And entry 13. This is the number, and this is the actual value. What I want to do is I want to take these values and I want to replace them with our variables. I want to take test name and replace it with our variable. What is our variable? It's reported by. Then what I want to do is I want to take that test email right here and I want to replace it with, of course, our email address variable. And I want to do that same thing for the next two variables. So we're going to replace them, but we have to be careful to make sure that we replace them properly inside and outside of quotations. So we take the first part of our link here, and then we end it, right after equals, we put in a quotation marks, and then the variable, and then we're going to go back into the link, and then the next part, which is our email address, of course, then separate it out with the quotation, and then our email address. So we're building this link based on several different fields, and you can have as many fields as you want, as long as you put the variables in here. Again, and then the specific question number, that unique ID for that question, and then issue type. And then what else do we want? Then we want entry, and then our last, of course, our last question and the last variable. Then, very importantly, and this is very important, and the last part of our link, when you have all of your questions in, all of them in, you want to put and submit equals submit. That's gonna know that we're submitting our form information from this link. So that builds up our link. So we have it in two parts. The first is the initial, and the second part contains all of our variables, and then the last part we're going to submit it. Once we build this start link, we can build our send link. We're just going to rebuild it. Send link equals the start link and the end link. So all we're going to do is put these two links together to create an entire link, or basically a string link. Next up, I want to set the ticket info. That's going to let us know, that's going to open the connection that we need to send to the Google Forms. So ticket info equals new server connection, XML, HTTP 60. Remember, very, very, very important. This will only work when we set references. We need the XML 6.0. That's the most important one. Make sure that you find it on your list down here. And if you have an error, it's because you have not set this one. Okay, so make sure you have the Forms 2.0. That's also helpful, but you got to have this XML 6.0. Very important. Okay, moving on. So we understand that we have to that, and the reason is because we're dimensioning it up here. If you get an error on this line right here, reset any error, go into Tools, References, locate XML 6.0 from down on this list all the way down here. Okay, and select it. All right, moving on. So now that we have the ticket info, we've set the ticket info for this new service, we're going to open a post to it. We want to post to it. And what do we want to post? I want to post this entire send link, and then false. So that's going to open the connection and post our entire link. Then what I want to do, it's going to wait and get all our information back. So the ticket info, set requested header, the header name, and send ID. And the ticket info, now it's going to send it. It's going to send all of that information over to Google. And next up, what I want to do is I want to get a status text back. So the ticket info, remember this is what I said, the status text, it should be okay. If it's sent, it's going to give you an OK message back. So if we can check, if it's OK, then we can put this message box. Thank you for submitting. But if it's anything else, there was an issue. Maybe they don't have an internet connection, or maybe they didn't fill out the right fields or something. So if it's anything other than OK, then they're going to get a message box. So for example, if I run this now, we're going to get a bad request. It's going to say, please check your internet connection because the form hasn't been filled out. Let's stop it right here. And then I'm going to run it one more time just so we can see it. And what is that status text? It's called bad request. So that just means there's a reason for the bad request. In this case, the reason is simply the form hasn't been filled out. There's no data. Without the data, it can't send it. So keep that in mind because those are required fields. Maybe if you don't require all those fields, you wouldn't get the error. But I did require them. So make sure that we set those form requirements for the user as well. So, okay, great. So we understand how we get this form, and what that's going to do is send it automatically to Google. So let's do just that. Let's do a sample there. We're going to run this, what's going to run that top, and now we're going to put in Fredders, my favorite name, email fred@fredders, and fredders.com, and then the type, put in the type, and then please fix missing feature. Okay. So then click submit text, and it's going to submit it automatically. Thank you for submitting. We will email you shortly. There we go. Okay, so now that goes automatically to our Google Forms. And if we look here in our test, we will see that it just appeared here, Fredders. So now it's in Google Forms. So how do we get this back into Excel? Well, we've gone over this before, but I'm going to go over it again because you probably didn't see it. It's okay if you did. It's very, very simple. All we need to do is go into File and click Publish to the Web. We don't need to publish the entire document. We just need to publish our first page. That's the only thing we have. Now we've got a web page, and now all we do is copy that link. And usually I've published already, so it's not asking me for confirmation. It'll ask you for confirmation. So click Publish to the Web, and we'll just click Form Responses, right? All we need is click Form, and that's it. We just take this link. Good. Now copy that link, and we're going to go back into this, and in our ticket import here, you'll probably want to click on A1. A1 is what I originally clicked on. It automatically hides, but what I'll do is I clicked on A1, and here's where I have it. But if you have a new sheet, right, we'll go into New Sheet, Data, and then From Web, and then what you want to do is you want to make sure you paste in the link right here, paste that link in, and then we can click Go, and click yes, that's fine. So then great. So then we have our link, and then just click import. And we want to do one more thing, right? When we select A1, which is fine, and then properties, make sure that you don't have background refresh on. Make sure to unclick enable background refresh. Why is that? Because it's going to run in a macro, and the idea is I want that data to refresh completely before continuing on the macro. So very important. Disable or make sure enable is not checked into background refresh, and then just click OK, and then it's going to automatically OK, and it's going to put it in your sheet right here. I don't want to put it in because I already have a connection on here, so I'm going to click cancel, but in your sheet you want to do that. I'm going to delete this. So that's all I did to get this, and then it's going to automatically hide your column, probably hide the column. It's going to bring in all of the data into your sheet automatically, and then when you want to connect it, and of course we're going to do it through VBA, but simply refreshing all connections will automatically add any new to your sheet, which is great. But I'm going to delete this one now because I want to do it through VBA, which I want to do because I want to show you how we do it through VBA. So it's going to bring all of that in through that connection. So how do we now take that information and bring it into our tickets table, and then bring our tickets table and bring it back into our tickets? I want to go over that with you right now. All right, so we went over this macro. We understand how this macro will show it. All we need to do is assign this to the button. It's going to show that pop-up. And we understand how we get the information to Google Sheets, but how do we get it back from Google? Well, that's going to call update tickets macro. And I've created a macro called refresh data connections. We don't need this. So all we need to do is run this workbook, refresh all. Now remember, I just want to show you something again because it's important. Data, right? When we go into the data and then we click connections and then properties here, notice that enable background refresh is not clicked. If it was selected, what's going to happen is inside our macro, it's going to refresh it, and then it's going to continue on with the rest of our macros even before it's done because it's doing it in the background. I don't want it. I want this to first, because I need to work with that new data. I need to make sure that new data comes in first before doing anything else. So the best way to do that is to make sure that we're not allowing background refresh. So keep that in mind. I wanted to show it to you because I wanted to make sure you understand that so that your macro doesn't continue to run without the data being there. All right, so I want to do the last ticket. We don't need this actually. I wanted to mention the first available row as long, the first available row, because I need to know where we're going to put that row. It's very important. We're going to, of course, all the information here is going to be refreshed, but I need to know, what about here? What's the first available row? In this case, it's 16, but I need to know where we're going to put the new information, and I only want the new information. So all that's very important. I also want to know what the last row is the last ticket row, the last ticket was on row 10, right? We imported it. So every time we imported, we want to know the last row so that we can keep building on it, so that I can look. In other words, all of this information is going to be replaced, right? So let's say we have 10 more rows. I don't want to have to import all of the data again here. I only want to import the new data. I know that all the new import data would be on row 11 and down because I saved row 10 right here. Every time we import, we save the row, and so I know that it's now the row 10 is the last one. Okay, so that's important. We want to keep track of that last row. So the first available row and the last row, and the last import row and the first import row. These are all rows that we're going to have to keep track of as we import the data, and I'll go over each one with you. So we also wanted to mention the last ticket row and the last result row. Once we run it, we're going to have to take all of this data, and maybe they're going to run it through an advanced filter because maybe they only want to show open. This one's been closed, so maybe we only want to show open. So we're going to run an advanced filter with criteria of only open, perhaps, if they've selected it. Get all those results, take those results, and bring them back into here, into this table here. So let's do that, and let's show you how we did that in the code. So with sheet 3 is our tickets table. Our tickets table is right here. This is what our tickets table is, our main tickets table. So with sheet 3, we're going to be primarily focusing on that. The last ticket, of course, is going to be sheet 1, B6. I went over that. B6 right here, I need to know the last row. B6 is where the last row of our import. As we add that, that import row is going to grow. So we want to keep track of that as well in a variable. The last import row is on sheet 4, B999. That's the last import row. That's the data that Google's going to bring in for us through our connection. And I also want to know the last import row. Once all new data has been done, I still need to know the last row so we can work on that. I know that the first row perhaps is 11, and the last row could be down here. We need to get all that new data that came in and bring it over into the tickets table. So we need to define that as well. If the last import row is less than 5, we don't need that. I'm just going to put exit the sub. That was for a test. Exit the sub. That means there's no data, right? If the last import row, here's our first row is 5, right? If the last row is less than 5, that means there's no data. So we don't need to move on. We can exit the sub. So we can do that with just that line of code. If the last data rows, then exit the sub. No need to move further on with that. Assuming that it's 5 or greater, we can continue on. If the last import row is equal to B5, then go to no new data. Why would that be happening? In this case, look, the last import row in this case is 10, right? And if we look to the last time we imported it, it's also 10. So we don't need to know. There's no new data. Nothing new in here. No new. If the last import row is 11 or 12, of course there's new data. But if it's equal, there is no new data. So we can go to no new data. What that's going to do is going to go all the way down here. We're still going to run the macro to update the tickets, which I'll go over with you. But we don't need to do any import, meaning we don't need to take any data from here and bring it into here because there is nothing new. Okay, so moving on. First import row equals sheet 6B. That's the first plus 1. Why would that be? The first import row, in this case, would be 11. Our last import row is 10. Remember that. So our first import row, assuming that we have data, would be 11, which is the last import row here, 10, plus 1 equals 11. So we need to know the first one. And of course, the last one, which we don't know, using and XLF is going to get us our last one. Our last one, of course, was defined right up here, our last one. So we have our first one, first import row, and we have our last import row. So we know all, that means basically I know all the rows of the new data. I only want to bring in that new data, so that those two are important. The first and the last are very important together. Otherwise, if it's not greater, then it might be the first import. So what if the last import row is not greater? Then we're just going to set then it could be the first time you ever imported data. We're going to set it to 5. That's going to be the first row. First row is 5. If the first row is less than 5, make sure it's 5. We need to make sure, of course, it shouldn't be, because this one we'll check to make sure it's not, but just in case we got through that part, if there's some issue, it'll set it to 5 no matter what. Now, I also want to know the row. How many rows are we importing? Well, the row quantity is going to be the last import row minus the first import row plus 1. We want to know, because I want to tell the user how many new tickets there were. This will help. The row quantity will help get us that, and it's also going to help us when we import the data. So we want to know the row quantity. How many tickets, new tickets, did we import? Also, the first available row. Of course, if I'm bringing in data into this tickets, I need to know the first available row. That's very important. Where am I going to put this new data? Put it in this case, it's going to be 16. So we need to get the first row here. Okay, so we got the first available row is going to be sheet 3A. That's plus 1. So this is the last row with a value. And then adding 1 is going to give us our first available row. Now we're ready to bring in the data. So I can do that B through F of sheet 3. Remember, we're focused on sheet 3 here. We don't need this because we've already defined sheet 3 up here. So the B through F and the row quantity 1, what is that? Well, B through F is what? B, we'll show you A in a moment. A is going to be based on a formula. B through F, I want to take in created on and all these, all 1, 2, 3, 4, all 5 of these columns. I want to bring them straight from here. Timestamp, that's going to be our created on, and all the way. So I want to take B through F here and bring it over to B through F. In this case, any new records would go down here. B through F. Then, of course, H is going to be nothing because it hasn't been closed yet. The status will set automatically. And then the row we're going to set through a formula, and the ticket we're going to set through a formula. Okay, so how do we do that? B and the first available row through the first available row plus the row quantity minus 1. Basically, this is going to get us all the data is equal to, where is it equal to? Sheet 4. Let's close this up. Sheet 4B in the first import row to the last import row. Basically, we're focused only on the new data since the last import. Take all that new data and bring it into the ticket sheet. Copy over data. Now what I want to do is I want to get a ticket ID. So the best way to do that is just use a formula. If I know our first, I want to start it off at 1, our ticket numbers, I want to start them off at 1. And I know that if in row 3, our first ticket number would be 1. So to do that would be the row, which is 3, minus 2 is always going to be 1. So if I put this same formula in every row, it's going to give us a numerical value of whatever the row 15 is minus 2. So it's a very easy way to assign a unique ticket number. So I did just that through VBA. I assigned it that specific formula. So the formula for every single field in column A, first available row, all the way to the first available row plus the quantity minus 1 for every single new, we're going to give it this formula, equals row minus 2. And that's going to give us a unique ID for each one based on the row number, so it's kind of helpful. I also want to automatically assign the status of every single new ticket as open. I want them all to be open because then manually we're going to close them off as we fix the issues. So that's of course going to go in column G. So now we have G in column, it's all going to be open. And next up I want to set the row number. This is going to be helpful. I need that row, I need a formula, I need to know the row. Why do I need to know the row? Because I'm going to take this data, I'm going to put it through advanced formula, the advanced filter I should say. And it's going to bring the row in. And then it's going to take all this data and bring it into the tickets. But when I make an update, if I change this to closed and I click update ticket, I need that ticket to make sure that it gets closed right in here. I need to make sure that it goes closed right here. So how do I know that it's on row 4? Well, I can do it through a hidden column right here. If you'll see here, if I change the font, change it to black, you'll see that this is row 3. So we know that. So if I click here, I know that it's row 3 because I've brought the row over. I've brought it from here, then it moved over to here, and then I brought it back in our tickets. So as long as I know the original row, as soon as I change this to close and click update, close and click update, it's going to, of course, it's going to disappear because I'm only showing open. Of course, I want to show them all. It's going to show here and here and here. So it's going to show those. So I know the row. So the row is very, very important. So we need to always understand it. So that's why we add the row here in a formula. That's going to help let us update that record. Okay, great. I'm glad we got that done. Now, next up, sheet 1. Again, I want to update B6 to the last important row. Now, we've just updated it. We know maybe our last imported row was 13 or 15 or whatever it is. I need to take that and I need to update this B6. So for the next import, this number is going to be updated. Also very important. For example, if we check, we added one more update. I think we added one more, right, that I deleted. So let's go through VBA and then do the whole import, and it's going to show that it's going to update to 11. We can do that with this macro. If we right click this macro, if we right click an individual shape inside the macro, and click Assign Macro, we see that we have the Refresh Data Connection. Refresh Data Connection is the macro that we just were going over, Refresh Data Connection. So now when we look at it, if we click this, it's going to automatically update and keep going. It's going to look for that one. It's going to tell us how many one new ticket has been updated. You see the last ticket row is now updated to 11. We have that brand new field here that we added previously, so it's all in here, and now it's also in here in the tickets. It's now in a brand new row here. So great. So we understand how that macro works in refresh, and let's take a quick look. There's more to go in that macro. Let's take a look. After we get through the macro we put in the last row, we're going to run a new macro called update tickets. All we've done with this macro, all I've done is this macro is I've updated the database right here. All I've done is updated this. But now what I want to do is I want to take this information, I want to run it through a possible filter. Notice there's no filter now, but as soon as I add open tickets, now it's only showing open. So I want to run it through a criteria here. Now it says open. I want to run it through so that we only show maybe open tickets, get the results here, bring those results in here, and bring it and put them in this table right here. So how do we do that? We do that with just one more macro. And it's right here. It's called update tickets, because that's the macro that's going to run automatically after it's refreshed. So how do we do that? Well, the last ticket row is long and the last results row, we need those. That's important. Sheet 1, D17, I want to clear all the existing data. The first thing I want to do I want to take D17 all the way, including L, and I'm going to clear out this data. Notice we've got some nice conditional formatting that's going to show it automatically so that our table grows. So the first thing I want to do is clear out all that data on sheet 1. Sheet 1, of course, is our tickets. Now we're ready with sheet 3. The last ticket row is going to be A, 9 up. That's the last. We need to know the last row. Of course, if we're going to run an advanced filter, I need to know the last row. In this case, it's 16. That's going to help us. So we've gone through that. If the last ticket row is less than 3, then exit the sub. That means there is no data, so there's nothing to continue with. All right, next up, we want to run our advanced filter. We do that with the headers A2 through I. That's the last column, the last ticket row, running the advanced filter. I want to copy that, and I want to set the criteria range. This is that open or close, N2 through N3. Now, how did we get that? This is a formula. So let's take a look at this. If I right-click on this, and I click Format Control, where is it connected? It's connected to B5. As I change this, B5 changes. So B5 is showing true right now. But I want to set a formula here. So we can do that based on this. If tickets B5 equals true, then set this to open, right? Meaning we only want open tickets to be displayed. Otherwise, set it to blank. Otherwise, we want to show everything. So we don't have to put in the criteria through VBA because it's automatically placed in there through that formula. So now we have our criteria and we run it through advanced filter N2 through N3 is going to be our advanced filter. And where do we want those results? We want them in P2 through X2. So that's where we do in the rest of our advanced filter, copy to P2 through X2 and unique equals false. That's going to get us all of the results. And next up, I need to determine the last row. In this case, last row is 13, but we need N to X up to make sure that we actually have results. And so we're going to get the last results row. In this case, it's 13. We can do that with this line of code. The last results row equals dot range P999 and XLUP row. This is the last results row. If the last results were less than 3, of course, then exit the sub. That means there are no results. Sheet 1, assuming that there are results, sheet 1 D17 through L in the last row plus 14. Why plus 14? Notice this first row here starts on row 3. This row here, the first one starts on 17. So we need to add to make sure we compensate for the row difference. So we can do that with this sheet 1 D17 through L last equals P3 through X and last. So this is going to bring all of our filter data over. Bring over all data. Okay. So that's going to bring us all of our data over. Great. So we understand now how to do that. So all we need to do, if we run that macro again, we don't need to just run the macro, and it's going to bring in all the data right here where we need it. Nice. So we have that. What else do we have on the macros? Ticket load, that's a great macro. When I select here, I want to load the details up here. How do I do that? Well, I can use data mapping, as you may have seen before. Now let's take a look at row 14. I'm going to change the font color to black, and it's kind of hard to see, so let me raise this up a little bit. Take a look at the cells. If you're not familiar with data mapping, the ticket number is an E4. Right? G4, of course, is the created on. Notice that these fields coincide with the columns that are reported on from email. Issue type is H6. So each column is connected through this data mapping. So if I'm going to loop through column 4, I believe through 11, if I'm going to loop through these columns, what I want to do is I want to take whatever's in the selected row. And how do we know the selected row? The selected row is going to be in B3. So as I select different, you see B3 changes to whatever row I've selected. So we can see that here. So how do we get it? So if we know the row, then all we need to know is the column. We can go through, okay, so what's in row 20, column 4, put it in E4. Whatever's in row 20, column 5, put it in G4, and so on and so forth. So we can do that with a very simple macro. And let's go over that macro with you. So the ticket row is long. We need to know that ticket row, and we need to know the ticket column. We always need to know both the row and the column, and of course the sheet, but we know the sheet already. With sheet 1, we're focused on that. That's the sheet. If B3 is empty, then exit the sub. Why is B3 important? B3 is our selected ticket row. Without that row, we wouldn't know what row to load the information into the form up here. So that's critical. We need to know that row. Assuming that we have B3 as a row, we can assign it a variable here. Ticket row equals B3. Next up, again, I'm going to run that loop that I just spoke of. 4 to 11, that's the column 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way. We're going to locate those columns, and we're going to run a macro. So what I want to do is I want to get the range. What is the range? That range, what is the range? It's either going to be E4, G4, I4. That's the range I want. And of course, it's located in row 14 in column 5. 4, column 5, column 6, column 7. So I'm going to loop through the columns. The 14 is going to remain, and I'm going to get those specific ranges. And I'm going to find whatever's in that column, I'm going to put in that range here in E6 here. Whatever's in this column, I'm going to put in H6. So that's how we run the loop to go through and add the data very simply with just a few lines of code. So the range, so we understand the range H4, H5, whatever. This value, whatever the value is going to be equal to whatever the ticket row is and whatever the ticket column is. So it's going to loop through those and load all the ticket data. That's it. That's all we have to do to load the ticket. Very, very easy. But how do I take this data, and if I save it, if I change this from closed, and if I put in a date here, how do I get this information back into this information here? For example, we're focused on right now, it would be 7, right? So let's take a look at that. 7 is the one we have loaded up here. So this is the one. What I want to do is I want to add the closed on here, and I want to add the closed status here and the closed date here. So how do I do that? Well, I can do that with the macro And the macro has been assigned to this button here. So if I right click the update ticket, click assign macro, we can see it's been assigned to ticket save update, save update. And that macro is right here, ticket save update. So how do we do that? Well, the ticket row is long. We always need to know the row. That's very important. We always need to know the column and of course the selected row. So those are the variables I need to know. The selected row is going to be in B3. We know that. Remember, we've been over that. The ticket row, what is the ticket row? Remember, that's located in column L and the selected row, right? Column L here. Remember, that's why we bring it over. I need to know the database row so that I can bring the information back to the right row. So we can do that with this line of code. This column, these specific rows are going to help us do that. That's why we always have it. Sure, we can hide them, but they'll always be there. So with that, with the selected row, now we have the selected row. Now we have the ticket row. Now all we need to do is go to the column. The ticket column equals 2 to 8. Why 2 to 8? Because we're focused on the tickets table here. These are the columns that we're focused on. B is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are the columns that I want to add the information to. We know the row now, and now we know the columns because we're going to go 2 through 8. Why are we not? We don't need to update this because that's never going to change. We don't need to update this. Those are formulas. Those won't change. So we only need to add 2 through 8. So that's why we loop only through there, because this ticket number won't change. All right, so we loop through that, and what does it equal? What does this, the ticket row, the ticket column, what does it equal? It equals sheet 1 range. Again, we're going to use the data mapping here, 14. Remember, 14 is that row that shows our shape. Range, whatever's in this range, whatever the value is in this range is going to go in here. Again, so let's just look at that one more time. Whatever's in G4, whatever's in I4, whatever's in E6. But take a look at this. This column, the first column here, created on, this is column 5. But in actuality, in our database, this is column 2. So I need to make a 3-column adjustment because our loop is going from 2 to 8. But this loop is actually starting off in column 5 and going to 11. So what do we need to do? We need to make the adjustment. So we can do that with this line of code right here. Ticket column plus 3, because there's a difference in columns in our two sheets. Row 14, this ticket column plus 3. What this is going to do is going to start it out at 5, then go to 6, then 7. Except here it's going to start out at 2. So it's just a differentiation in the columns. And all we're going to do is loop through that from 2 to 8 for 6 different columns. Next up, all I want to do is update the tickets. I just want to click the update tickets and make sure that we have updated all of the information so that any changes that we make get updated in our new list. So how does that work? So as long as if I put in a closed list, unless we're showing, let's show all of them. So let's say I set this and I set a closed on date to 1/30. That's going to automatically, as soon as I click update tickets, it's going to automatically update it right here because we ran the update tickets. Great, so we understand now how that now we can hide this. We no longer need this, so we can change the font to make it look nice back to that's very light orange, same as the background color, and bring down our guide. All right, great. So we understand now how we're getting the information and how we save it, how we bring the database. The last really thing we want to show you is how that we get those automated emails. We have actually 5 different email templates based on a drop-down list. So if we click on data and data validation, we tab over and we can see that it's called email templates. And those are based on these names that I've assigned here. I have only assigned 5 of them. You can create as many as you want. And it's based on C2 all the way through G2. So that's a named range based on those templates. So when a user selects those, I need to know what column, right? If the issue fixed, that is going to be on column 3, right? C is column 3, D is column 4. So I need to know that column. That's important because all of the subject and the message, I need to pull that out. So how do I get that? I need to know the column. I know the row, the subject is always going to be 3, and I know the row of the message is always going to be 4, but I need to know the column. The column is variable. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So how do I get that? Well, there's many ways. I just use a formula to get that. So if we look here in this selected email column here in B4, I just use a simple formula, a match formula. What are we matching? We're matching whatever the user has entered in I13, and we're going to match it by the email templates. That's the named range I just showed you, and then 0 because I want an exact match. Then I want the column number, right? So I don't want the first one. If it's the first one, it's going to be 1, right? But I don't want 1 at the first match. I want the column. So we're adding 2. Again, why are we adding 2? Because I want the column. The column starts here in 3. So this is the first. So if we put in issue fixed, this is the first name. I don't want to return 1. I want to return 3. So we're just adding 2. It's going to get us the column number because that's what I want. I want the column number. So as we change this, if you'll notice, look in B4, you're going to see that it changes from 4 to 5 to 6 to whatever, to all the way up to 7. So that column is important. We're going to need that inside our VBA code. Let's take a look at that VBA code and see just how we did that. In the email macros here, we have email response. It's a very simple email, and I want to go over that with you right now. Before I do that, I just wanted to go over the variables with you. We're going to go over it in the macro. So we have variables. We can use all these variables inside our email here. And then the actual data is based on here. So we have the variables and the data. Now, how is this data? This data is simply connected to E4. This is connected to G4. And that's all basically is just a straight link to this field or this field or this field or whatever. They're just straight links to whatever's displayed here. So it's very, very simple. So what I want to do inside the email is I want to look inside this email body or look inside this email subject and look for any of these variables. If it's found, I want to replace whatever the ticket number here is with 1, or whatever they're created on with this date. So I want to replace these variables if they're found with whatever's here. Notice there's no reported by. So now we have all the information. So notice now we have Fred and we have issue date. So we have all the data from that. As we change the data here, it's going to show up here in the emails. So that is how we're going to do it. We can do it in VBA. All we need to do is run a loop from 6 to 11, looking for any of these variables, replacing them with any of this data. It's very simple. So let's go through that. So inside the email template column, remember we need to know that column, very important. And we also need to know the variable row. We're going to loop through the variable rows from 6 to 11. So we need to know those rows. The message, the email message, or the email subject and the email address are all strings. We need those. I'm going to dimension the Outlook application as object and the Outlook mail as object. So if sheet 1 B4 equals empty, then please select a correct email template from the drop-down list. We need to make sure that we actually have an email template column which is located in B4. So that's really critical. We need to know that if we don't have a column, we can't put an email out. All right, next up, we're ready to set the Outlook application is to create object Outlook application. This is important for Outlook. We need to create the Outlook application. And of course, we're going to set the email template to column equal to sheet 1 B4. That's going to get the selected. We need to know that column. The email, of course, is going to be in sheet 1 E6. We need to know the email address so we can send it out to somebody. With sheet 2, that's our email sheet. The subject, the initial subject, is going to be in cells, right? We're using cells because both the dynamic column and the range are in row 3, and the column, whatever that dynamic column is, and the message is in row 4. We went over that just a minute ago, so you understand. The subject is in 3, the message is in 4, based on whatever column the user has set. All right, so now we have the subject message. Now what I want to do is I want to take it and replace with those variables, and I can do that with just a few lines of code. For the variable row equals 6 to 11. 6 here to 11 here. Run, check everything. If this is found, replace it with this. If this is found, replace it with this. We can do that right here. Replace whatever the subject is, whatever is found. If whatever is found in the variable row column 3, whatever's variable column 3, then replace it with whatever's in column 4 if it's found. So basically, if it's found in column 3, replace it with whatever's in column 4. If the next one is found, if whatever's found is in column 3, replace it in column 4. That's all we're doing, and we're going to do that both with the subject and with the message. So we're going to do that with each of those. That's going to get us all of the actual variables inside our email, which is really helpful. Next up, we're ready to set the Outlook email. We're going to create that email. This is going to create an email, and we're ready to work with it. What are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to set the email address to 2. Going to set the subject to the subject and the body to the body, and then display. I want to display this message, but when you don't want, make sure you use .send. Use .send to send without displaying first, right? Because obviously in our purposes, we don't want to send any messages. So I'm just keeping it a dot display. That will change. So now if we take a look, if I right click this and click assign macro, we see that the email response, the macro we just went over, has been assigned to this button. So now all we need to do is click send, and it's going to create an email that says, hello Randy, thank you for reporting the issue. Test 2, we have now fixed the issue and it's closed on 12. I didn't set a closed on date, so that's fine. There's no closed on date, but let's choose one that does have a closed. This one has a closed on date. So if we click send, it says closed on 1/1. You can use formatting if you want the time as well. Please let us know. And so whatever's in that email format, it's going to change. So if we say issue fixed, or maybe we're working on it and we click send, now it's going to say thank you for reporting the following issue. We are currently working on the issue and please let us know. So we can really use different email templates very, very easily and very, very quickly. So I'm glad I got to show that to you. Let's just do a review. So basically when you get this application, of course it's free, as you know it. They all are. If you do like these applications, I've got actually a $37 application zip pack. It's got 100 workbooks in it. So if you like that, I hope you do get a chance. Go ahead and pick that up. I would appreciate it. So when you do get this form, all you need to do in your own applications is keep this the way it is. You don't need this test form here. All you want to do again is take whatever application you have, open up both applications, open up your application and this application. Take this form, drag this into whatever application you have. Take this submit ticket macro, drag it into your other application. And then inside your application, just create a button and assign a macro. Right click, and the macro you want to assign is called display. Right here, display submit ticket form. That's all you have to do, and it's done for you. If you appreciate that, I hope you do. Thanks so much. Also, please, if you get a chance, our mentorship program is on fire. Tons and tons of students are signing up. I'm teaching them how to define, design, develop, and deploy their own applications so they can have recurring income and get out of that freelance trap, which is easy to get into. So thanks so much. I hope you appreciate this training, and great. I'm glad I got to show you how to send to Google Sheets without Zapier and create an amazing help desk manager around it. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.